If you've been a fan of Fnaf or just indie horror in general since at least 2016, then you've probably heard of a little game called The Joy of Creation. To many people, including me, this is the best Fnaf fan game of all time. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then I'm just going to go ahead and assume that you're a new Fnaf fan, in which case, you don't know what you missed out on in those early years. However, if you're not a new Fnaf fan and you haven't heard of tjoc, you must have been living under the biggest rock. Let me just give you a rundown of what this game is. The Joy of Creation Classic was an amateur and honestly kind of bad Fnaf fan game made in 2015 by a well-known solo game developer in the horror game world, Nixon. If not for tjoc, you might know Nixon for Dark Deception, which he also helped work on, and the 5th chapter of that game should be coming out pretty soon. Hopefully. tjoc Classic is pretty heavily inspired by Fnaf 4. In particular with you playing at an office and a house while fending off the ignited animatronics, who if you know a single damn thing about Fnaf, are obviously inspired by the Wizards. The gameplay of tjoc Classic itself is bad. The animatronic models looking like Play-Doh, and the game crashing every time you get jump scared. Now, this game is a piece of hot garbage, but it paved the way for the next game I'll be talking about. The Joy of Creation Reborn. tjoc R, as it's known, is completely different from tjoc Classic, throwing away the office gameplay for a completely free roam experience. While this game's actual gameplay is extremely basic, it proved to be the jackpot for YouTubers.
Oh, I see him! I see him! I see him! No! No! Why is that so I'm dead, and let's go!
A free roam Fnaf game was something that at this point many people were asking for, and until Security Breach and the countless other free roam Fnaf fan games that there are now, this was the definitive Fnaf free roam game. This game also gave the ignited animatronics the design and detail that they deserved, and also single-handedly started Bonnie's punching obsession. Now that we've covered the predecessors, it's time to talk about what this video is actually about. The Joy of Creation story mode is, as it says in the title, the story of tjoc. I won't be talking about how to actually play each memory in detail, because if I did, this video would be way too long. So let's go over the basics. Instead of playing as a random night guard or one of the Aftons, you play Scott Cawthon himself in a fictional universe where he made the first 4 Fnaf games, which is where the franchise was up to when tjoc was released, and cancelled the 5th entry, which would have been Sister Location, but then everyone forgot about it. The whole franchise. The game begins with a cutscene from the perspective of an intruder in Scott Cawthon's house. The intruder introduces himself as Michael as he sits on the floor, disoriented and confused. Scott decides to take pity on him and lets him stay the night. Now, the gameplay begins. On the first memory, which are the equivalent of nights, except they all take place on the same night, you play Scott Cawthon's son Nick in his cot when he's contacted by Michael, who is essentially the phone guy of this game. He tells Nick how to fend off the ignited animatronics from his bedroom. Freddy appears at the window trying to get in, Chica in the wardrobe, Bonnie at the hallway door, and Foxy from under the cot. This is a nice introduction level to the ignited animatronics, and the vibe of this game as a whole. And it isn't too challenging either from what I've heard. Yes, I've never actually played it. The curse of a console. The second memory is called Living Room. You play as Scott's wife right after her bedroom took place. Scott leaves his wife in the living room as he goes upstairs to check on Nick. Meanwhile, Mrs. Cawthon is also contacted by Michael, who explains that the animatronics are coming for her. She must fend off ignited Freddy, Bonnie, and Foxy, who come from the 3 different doors in the living room simultaneously. So to stop them, she needs to use a cool game mechanic, which I'll talk about. Using the TV in the living room, which shows what the animatronics see, like little cameras, you can pause them, which prevents them from showing up all at once. Also, ignited Chica will try and disable the power in the room, I think. I'm not really sure, to be honest. Chica's fairly absent from this memory. After beating the living room, Scott runs into ignited Freddy in the halls, who chases him to his office where memory 3, Office, begins. The office level is based on the original tjoc Classic, and is a vast improvement. You must fend off Freddy from any of the doors and windows. Freddy also acts as how you progress the night, seeing as the hours are infinite. Foxy and the cameras will go away if you look at him, Bonnie will punch your camera if you look at him, and Chica will shimmy her way through a giant fucking hole in the wall until you find all of her cupcakes and she gives up. After beating the office, Scott runs down to the basement after getting a letter from his kids saying that that's where they're hiding. This is of course not the case. You move on to memory 4, the basement, where you face off against the fallen animatronics, which are just the ignited's endos. Now don't be fooled, just because these guys don't have any suits doesn't make them any less deadly. In fact, you could say they're actually more dangerous than their ignited counterparts. In the basement memory, there are different levels that you need to clear, while doing some tasks and avoiding the fallen, which don't move like normal animatronics. Think of them basically as weeping angels, with a scream that will remove your fucking soul.
Hurry! Hurry!
Now after beating all the basement levels, which are actually pretty difficult, Scott is knocked out by Michael and brought to the fifth memory, the attic, where he is restrained in a chair in a conventional FNAF experience, as the house begins to burn down. In this final memory, you must try and keep the fallen endos from coming through your doors on either side into the attic. You must flash a golden Freddy if he appears behind you, and defend against a terrifying new animatronic simply called Creation. Creation is essentially Enter from such a location, in the sense that he is all the ignited animatronics combined into one monster, who acts as the final boss and main threat in Memory 5. Creation will start in the basement and make his way through all the previous rooms in the house to try and reach Scott in the attic. If you fail to keep Creation away, this terrifying animation will play as Creation kills Scott. When beating this challenge, Scott will break free from his restraints and begin crawling to the exit while the house burns around him, and Michael taunts him through the radio, saying that he cannot just wait until 6 AM for it to be over, like in his games. Scott in his dying moments begs Michael to let his family live, but he doesn't get an answer. Instead, Michael appears in front of him, picks him up, and steals his body. After that, Michael leaves the house in Scott's body, containing the entities that were appearing as the animatronics, and tries to reassure his family, but they can tell that it's not Scott anymore, as he sounds extremely robotic. So just as a little explanation in case you're extremely confused, Scott and his family were haunted by these malevolent spirits, or entities, that took the form of Scott Cawthon's creations, the animatronics, and Michael Schmidt. Michael pretended to be a stranger who needed help, even though he was one of the entities himself, and put his family through hell with video game-like rules that bent reality, like the fact that in every memory the player has to last until 6 AM, even though they all take place in the same night. And in the office memory, Scott on the radio says that he's been there for days. Scott's wife and his sons escaped after the bedroom and living room memories, but Scott was still stuck in the house throughout the office, basement, and attic memories. At the end, the spirit that took the form of Michael took over Scott's body and allowed all the spirits to enter his body to live on and masquerade as him. Now I'll be rambling about why I love this game so much. First, the character design. The United animatronics are obviously based mostly on the withered animatronics from Fnaf 2, but even more broken down, almost like they've been set on fire. Hence the name. But they're iconic to tjoc and look amazingly terrifying, especially when they're chasing you down the hall. The Fallen are in my opinion the coolest and most terrifying animatronics in this game. To go over them all, there's Endo B Angel, who is the Fallen variant of Ignited Freddy. Can you guess why he's called that? Endo R Blue, who is Bonnie, Endo C Mouth, who is Chica, you can tell, because of the big mouth, and Endo F Red, who is Foxy. These designs, to me, look scarier than the Igniteds, except maybe Foxy and Bonnie. And they also have a great jumpscare sound. Now Creation. I have a soft spot for Creation because he resembles in concept my tied favourite FNAF animatronic, and he also just looks cool and intimidating. Another thing I like is the mixture of office gameplay and free roam in this game, as it keeps the experience fresh and allows for different types of horror to be utilised. Now that's pretty much all I have to say about tjoc. This is by far my favourite FNAF fan game as a result of its amazing concept and nightmarish vibe. Now all there is to do is to wait for the inevitably groundbreaking reboot that Nixon is working on, also called The Joy of Creation, in all caps. Nah, but I'm really excited for this, especially after Nixon released a demo for the office level and some footage of Foxy getting paused. And also because it's going to be on console, so I can actually play it. That's all from me in this video. Like the video if you enjoyed it to support this new channel I made, and comment what you think about this topic. Thanks for watching, and bye. Where he made the first 4 FNAF fan game. Wait, what the fuck? You play as Scott Cawthon. Which is where the front. Now all there is to do is wait for the inevitably groundbreaking. Why do you want to bake the ground? The Joy of Creation Classic was an amateur and honestly kind of bad FNAF game. Fuck my ass. A free roam FNAF game is something that at this point in the what? At this point in what, Alex? Explain.